What would you do if a cop walked up to your window tonight and asked for your license before telling you why you were stopped? If you reach too fast, speak too much, or ask the wrong thing, you can make a simple stop much worse. The first 10 seconds decide whether you stay in control or hand that control away. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe so you can find this video again when you actually need it during a real traffic stop. And tap like right now because this one question can save you from a huge mistake. Here's what you're about to learn. The first question you should ask before you start digging into your wallet or glove box, the one line that tells you whether this is a quick traffic stop or something bigger, the exact sentence that shuts down extra questions without sounding rude, and the simple words that stop you from giving permission to a search you never had to allow. Most people have no idea how fast a normal stop can turn into a full-blown investigation. They think being extra helpful protects them. It often does the opposite. Let me show you exactly how to slow the whole thing down. Keep your hands safe, keep your mouth safe, and stop giving away rights you may never get back. The problem starts because you want to look cooperative. You see flashing lights, your heart jumps, your brain says, move fast, find your license, explain yourself, and make the officer happy. That is what gets a lot of drivers in trouble. You start reaching before you know why you were stopped. You start talking before you know what the officer thinks happened. You start handing over clues without meaning to. A fast reach can look suspicious. A nervous joke can sound guilty. A long answer can become a statement that gets used later. Here's the reality. You do not need to be rude, but you do need to be smart. Your goal is not to win the officer over with chatter. Your goal is to stay calm, ask the right question first, and make every move on purpose. The first tactic is simple, and it starts before your hand ever touches your wallet. You look at the officer and say this: "Officer, why did you stop me?" Those exact words, memorize them. Keep your hands visible. Keep your voice calm. Ask that first, then comply with lawful instructions about your license and documents. Why does that question matter so much for you? Because it freezes the moment. It makes the officer state the reason for the stop before you start moving around, before you start explaining, and before you accidentally talk yourself into trouble. If you know the reason, you know what this is about. If the officer says you were speeding, now you know the lane. If the officer says your tag light is out, now you know the lane. If the officer gets vague or starts fishing, that also tells you something. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you were trying to understand the stop, not hide from it. Watch what happens when you do it the wrong way. The officer walks up and says license and registration. You panic. You dive into the glove box. Papers spill out. Your hand disappears near the center console. Now the officer gets tense. Then you start talking. I know, I wasn't doing anything. I was just leaving my friend's place. I only had one drink. I'm late. I'm sorry. You just gave the officer a pile of words they never had to work for. You may have even brought up things they were not thinking about. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, sorry, officer. I was just trying to get home." Then they admit things, make sudden movements, and give the officer more reason to look deeper. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, why did you stop me?" Then they keep their hands still, learn the reason, and respond with much more control. This question also protects you from guessing. A lot of drivers assume they know why they got pulled over. Then they start defending the wrong thing. They say they were not texting when the stop was about a lane change. They say they only had one beer when the stop was about a broken light. They bring up facts the officer did not mention. That is a gift to the other side. You never want to volunteer facts just because your nerves are loud. And no, asking why you were stopped does not mean you refuse to show your license forever. That would be a mistake in a lawful stop. In many places, if the stop is legal, you do have to provide your license. This is why the title matters. You ask first so you know what is happening before you reach. Then you comply with lawful orders. That order matters. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it lowers confusion and lowers the chance that your movement gets read the wrong way. There is legal backup for this idea too. In Delaware versus Prouse, the Supreme Court said police cannot just stop drivers at random to check a license without a real legal reason. In plain English, they need a lawful basis, not just a hunch and not just a whim. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Your question does not challenge the officer's authority in a loud way. It simply asks them to say the reason out loud. That matters for you because once the reason is clear, the stop has a lane. And when a stop has a lane, it is harder for the whole thing to drift into a fishing trip. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and one pattern shows up again and again. The drivers who do best are not the loudest. They are not the slickest. They are the calmest. They slow the moment down. They ask one clean question. They keep their hands visible. Then they comply without giving a speech. That is how you protect yourself in the first 10 seconds. Think you could stay that calm with lights flashing behind you? Let me know in the comments because this is where most drivers lose control before the stop even starts. Now let's move to the second tactic because after the officer gives the reason for the stop, many officers try to stretch the moment wider than it needs to be. That is where you ask the next question. Here's exactly what you say. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Word for word. You use this when the traffic part should be ending, but the talking keeps going. This matters because traffic stops have a mission. That means a job. The job is the stop reason, your documents, safety steps tied to that stop, and then you leaving. That is supposed to be the lane. But a lot of people get pulled into a second lane. Extra questions, extra waiting, extra fishing. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Why are you nervous? Do you have anything illegal in the car? Can I take a look? That is when you need to stop guessing and ask if you are still being held. Bad way. Most drivers say, I'm fine talking. What else do you need? Then the stop drags on, the officer keeps digging, and new problems get created. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to make the situation clear and you stop wandering into extra questions. Here's the reality. If you are free to leave, you should leave. Calmly. No speech. No attitude. No last-minute joke. You leave. If you are being detained, now you know this is no longer a casual chat. Now you know you need to protect yourself even more. That one question takes the fog out of the moment. This question has real legal support. In Rodriguez versus United States, the Supreme Court said a traffic stop cannot be stretched longer than needed to handle the traffic issue unless police have more legal reason. In plain English, they do not get endless bonus time just because you are sitting there. They can do normal traffic checks tied to the stop, but they cannot just turn every stop into a side quest because they feel like it. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when the officer starts drifting beyond the reason you were stopped. And this question is not hostile. That matters for you. You are not yelling. You are not refusing everything. You are asking a clean status question. That is smart. That is controlled. That is something your lawyer can point to later and say, my client was trying to learn whether the stop was over. There is another hidden benefit here. The question helps your brain. When people feel pressure, they fill silence with words. They start explaining where they were, why they are tired, why they have cash, why their friend texted them, why the car smells weird, why the bag in the back is not theirs. None of that helps you in the moment. This question buys you clarity. It tells you whether to leave or whether to move to your next protection. And if the officer says you are detained, do not argue about it on the roadside. That is not the moment. Your goal is to protect the record, not win a debate in a parking lot. You ask the question, you get the answer, then you move to the next line. The third tactic is the one too many people mess up because they think silence alone is enough. It is not always enough. Here's exactly what you say. I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Those exact words. Say them clearly, say them once, then stop talking. Watch what happens when you do not do this right. You think being quiet for a minute protects you. Then the officer keeps talking. They ask one more question, then another. You crack because the silence feels awkward. You answer one thing, then another. Now you have started a conversation you never should have started. That is why your words matter here. Bad way. Most drivers say, I didn't do anything or I can explain. Then they keep talking, get boxed into details, and create statements that can be used later. Good way. Smart drivers say, I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer. Then the record shows they clearly tried to stop the questioning. This part comes from a case a lot of people never hear about until it is too late. In Berghuis versus Thompkins, the Supreme Court basically said this. If you want to use your right to stay silent, say it clearly. Just sitting there quietly is not always enough. In plain English, the system does not always treat your silence like a magic shield. You need to use actual words. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Let me show you exactly why this is so powerful for you. Once you say this line, you stop being the source of free evidence. You stop trying to remember tiny details under pressure. You stop guessing times, names, and places. You stop fixing one answer with 5 more answers. That is huge because innocent people mess up details all the time. Stress makes memory worse, not better. The law does not give you extra credit for sounding brave. It just records what you say and tests it later. This is 100% legal. You are not obstructing. You are not resisting. You are using a right that exists for exactly this moment. Miranda versus Arizona made the right famous. But here is what people miss. The right only helps you if you actually use it. If you keep chatting after saying it, you weaken yourself. If you say, maybe I should get a lawyer, that is weak. If you say, I think I do not want to talk, that is weak. You need clean words. Listen closely because this is critical. Once you say the line, stop filling the silence. No small talk, no nervous smiling, no, but just so you know, speech, no trying to sound innocent, silence after the line is part of the line. Former police officers have confirmed this works because the whole tone changes when you stop volunteering information. Suddenly, the officer is not leading you around with easy little questions. Suddenly, you are not helping build the case. That is the difference between feeling polite and actually protecting yourself. If you've made it this far, you're serious about protecting your rights. Show me by hitting that like button, because the next tactic is where a lot of drivers accidentally give away everything. The fourth tactic is about searches, and this is where the just be cooperative myth destroys people. Here's exactly what you say. I do not consent to any searches. Word for word. Keep it simple. Keep it calm. Repeat it if you have to. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. You do not have to help create the search that hurts you later. A lot of officers ask in a friendly way, mind if I take a quick look? You don't have anything to hide, right? It will only take a second. That sounds small. It is not small. Consent changes the whole picture for you. If you say yes, you can make it much harder to fight that search later. Bad way. Most drivers say, go ahead, I've got nothing to hide. Then the officer searches more, finds something unexpected, or claims something looked suspicious. Good way. Smart drivers say, I do not consent to any searches. Then they keep their rights alive and give their lawyer more room later. This matters even when you think your car is clean. Maybe a friend left something behind. Maybe an old item got forgotten in a bag. Maybe an object looks bad even if it is legal. Maybe the officer says they smelled something. Maybe they are wrong. Maybe they are not. None of that means you should hand over consent for free. And if the officer searches anyway, do not get physical. Do not grab. Do not block. Do not touch. Your move is verbal, not physical. You say the line, you make your refusal clear, then you stay calm. That way, if the search gets challenged later, the record shows you did not agree. That can matter a lot. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. People get tricked into thinking refusal makes them look guilty. No. Refusal means you know your rights. That is all. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when a stop starts turning from traffic business into a wider investigation. Now let's put the legal picture together so you can actually remember it under stress. Delaware versus Prouse says police cannot randomly stop your car just to check your license without a real legal reason. In plain English, there needs to be a proper basis for the stop. Rodriguez versus United States says the stop should last only as long as needed for the traffic mission. In plain English, once the traffic work is done, they do not get endless extra time without more legal reason. Berghuis versus Thompkins says if you want to stay silent, you need to say it clearly. In plain English, quiet alone may not protect you. And Pennsylvania versus Mimms says if the stop is lawful, police can order you out of the car. In plain English, you can comply with lawful orders and still protect your mouth. That is the big lesson for you. Ask the reason first. Learn your status. Invoke your silence clearly. Refuse consent to searches. Comply where the law requires. Say less everywhere else. Now picture a real stop so you can feel how this works. You are driving home at night, lights hit your mirror, you pull over safely. The officer walks up and asks for your license. The wrong way starts fast. You dig into your pocket before saying a word, you drop your wallet, you reach toward the glove box, you laugh nervously, you say, sorry, I know I was probably going a little fast. I'm just coming from my friend's house. The officer did not even say speeding yet. Now you have made sudden movements and volunteered details. Then the officer comes back later and keeps asking where you were and what you were doing. You keep answering because you think that proves you are nice. Then they ask to search the car. You say yes because you think saying no looks bad. Now a simple stop is a mess. Here is the right way. You keep your hands visible. The officer asks for your license. You calmly say, "Officer, why did you stop me?" The officer says your brake light is out. Now you know the reason. You ask before you reach because you want the scene clear. Then you comply and hand over your license when told. Later, the officer gives the warning but keeps asking questions about where you are going. You say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" If the officer says you are free to go, you leave. If the officer says you are detained and keeps pressing, you say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer." If the officer asks to search, you say, "I do not consent to any searches." You stay calm, you do not argue, you do not help build the case against yourself. That is the difference. In the wrong version, you become the source of the trouble. In the right version, you stay respectful, you comply where you must, and you stop handing over more than the law requires. Coming next week, what to do when cops ask to search your phone. Subscribe because that video could save your entire life from being exposed. So lock these lines into your memory. First, ask, "Officer, why did you stop me?" before you start reaching around. Second, when the stop starts drifting, ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Third, if questioning continues, say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent and I want a lawyer." Fourth, if they ask to search, say, I do not consent to any searches. You do not need a long speech. You need short lines, calm hands, and the discipline to stop talking. Here's the reality. The safest driver in a stop is usually the one who says the least and asks the smartest question first. Hit subscribe so you catch next week's phone search video. Smash that like button if this just saved you from a future mistake, and drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.